Hello, this is Jackie B. Peterson, author of Better, Smarter, Richer, 7 Business Principles for Encores, Solos, and Creative Entrepreneurs. You know who you are, all of you in the one-person businesses who are striving to find financial success as well as fulfilling yourself by, making money doing what you love. How can you beat that? And what we've learned is that solo businesses are definitely and distinctly different from traditional businesses, and Better, Smarter, Richer has the 7 principles you must follow if you're going to find the financial success that you are seeking in your solo business. So go to the website, bettersmarterricher.com. You can download the free ebook. You can order the book. The book is a fill-in-the-blanks workbook, and it will get you thinking about how you need to approach the world a little differently in order to make your business a success. We also would love to have you sign up for the free newsletter and join the conversation on our very active blog. So today, my guest is Nancy Collamer. Nancy Collamer is a career coach, author, and speaker who is an expert at helping people create lifestyle-friendly careers. In private practice since 1996, Nancy gained national prominence as a career transition columnist for Oxygen Media and as the founder of the popular websites MyLifestyleCareer.com and JobsAndMoms.com. She holds an MS in Career Development from the College of New Rochelle and a BA in Psychology from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Nancy has a book called Second Act Careers, which I plan to recommend to my students in the new Encore Entrepreneur Program that will be launching September 2014. So as you might imagine, I'm very interested in learning more about her and her book. Hello, Nancy.
Hi, Jackie. So nice to be here.
Well, it's nice to have you here. This is great. I've been looking forward to this conversation, and as I said, I don't think you can imagine how many places that I put your book in a list of books that people should be reading when they're looking for their second act careers. So it's so nice to talk to you.
Likewise.
Yeah. So, Nancy, tell us about yourself and your career before you wrote your book, Second Act Careers. I think you've got some other books too. But start at the beginning, like where'd you grow up and go to school, and what led you to a career in coaching and writing?
Sure. Well, I often joke that my earliest childhood memories is sitting on my dad's lap and him saying to me, Nancy, what do you think you'd like to be when you grow up? And me not having a clue. So I always say it's somewhat ironic that I turned out to be a career coach. But I grew up on Long Island, and then I went to college down in beautiful Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and then made my way back up to Boston. And actually my very first job was working for AT&T back in the days when it was AT&T. And actually, it's funny how life works, and sometimes how things that at the time you interpret as being negative events actually steer you into your next act. I was working for AT&T at the time that they were going through the big divestiture and breakup. And as a result of that, they actually brought in a team of career counselors who met with people to help people think about what they'd like to do next. And that was going through that workshop process was really the first inkling that I had that maybe I would be interested in doing some career coaching. But fast forward, at the time I was in my early 20s, got married, moved down to Fairfield County in Connecticut, went to work for first in retail and then for an international freight company in corporate HR, and did that for about 10 years until I had my first child, and then was trying to figure out what to do next because I needed some flexibility in my life. And I really didn't know what I was going to do, and then I remembered that career coaching workshop I had been in, and I thought, what they do seems so interesting to me. And as I said, I had been in corporate HR, so I sort of had that employment background. Long story short, ended up discovering that there was one of 3 master's programs in the country, Masters in Career Development, that one of which happened to be located about 20 minutes from my house. signed up, went and got a master's in career development. And while I was raising two very young children at home with a husband who traveled all the time, started working from home and started out by doing some writing and some coaching, eventually got into telephone coaching. One thing led to the next. And that was really how I stumbled into career coaching. Fast forward to today, really my focus these days is on boomers. I work with people who are getting near the end of their first big career and are trying to think about what are they going to do during what we have traditionally called retirement. And, of course, these days, very few people are actually retiring. And it's great fun because there are so many interesting possibilities.
Oh, I love that, and I totally agree with you. It's so energizing, and we talk about this a lot, just so you know, Nancy. We talk about this a lot on this show about the opportunities that are available to people and the things that they are creating to do with their lives. And we also talk about the statistics, that there's 110 million people, AARP says that, 110 million people over the age of 50, a fourth in the economy. That's about a third of the population. And when they're interviewed, mostly around 70% say, that if they retire from what has been their lifetime career, that they're probably going to start a business or be active in some way. And we also know that's what's happening at the same time is what's being called the longevity bonus. One of my radio guests said the gift of the 20th century to the 21st century is 30 more years of life. And that, people are living longer, they're feeling good, they're energetic, they're interested, they're curious, and so they're doing things. And, there are more people 50 plus starting entrepreneurial ventures than any other age. Isn't that great? It's fun to be that age.
Absolutely, and that's a statistic I think that always surprises people. People tend to think of entrepreneurs as the 20-something in Silicon Valley, and the statistics show otherwise. And through writing the book, and also I write a twice-monthly column for nextavenue.org, which is a PBS website for people over 50. And that column is also syndicated by Forbes. And through that column, I have the opportunity to interview people all the time who are doing interesting things over the age of 50. And so I am I'm in such an enviable position from the standpoint of I get fed a constant diet of wonderful reinvention stories of people doing just really interesting, engaging things that in many cases they are so much happier than they were in their, quote-unquote, first or big-time career. So it's great fun.
And I think not only is the pressure off, when you're in your retirement career, I don't know quite what to call this, your second career, I think you're not raising kids anymore. A lot of times the financial pressure is off, but I also think there's a lot of wisdom. And, people are just saying, if I don't stop now and do what I've always wanted to do or do the work that I love, why would I even bother? So, there's a lot of passion around people doing what they love, which is one of the things I love to talk about all the time.
And I think, in the book I talk about that word passion because I think that is, and obviously it's in the subtitle of the book, 50-plus ways to profit from your passions during semi-retirement. So I am as guilty as the next person of probably overusing that word, but I have found that there are a lot of people who get scared off by that word because they say, well, I don't have any overriding passion. I like a lot of things, but there's not any one thing that grabs me. And so I actually recently just wrote one of my favorite blog posts about sort of redefining the word passion in terms of an acronym and thinking of it in terms of what are the people and the activities and the interests and the subjects that you enjoy, and the situations, and where do you see the opportunities and needs in the marketplace? Because when you can connect your interests and your talents with the needs in the marketplace, that's where the real magic happens.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I love that. That's a wonderful, wonderful blog. I'll have to go check your blog out and read that because I agree with you. And I'm using that in the program I talked about a little bit earlier that I'm launching in September through our Small Business Development Center. We are going to add a piece that SBDCs do not normally do, which is creating your business concept. And I have found that a lot of people, particularly those who have been working in, what we might call corporate America for 35 years, tend to think that they don't know anything that somebody might buy. And so, or as you say, anything they feel passionate about. So we're going to have a whole start capstone or beginning capstone, not an ending capstone, a beginning cap on the program about developing your business concept, because I think that's so important for people is to say, gosh, what is it that I really love to do? What did I always want to do back when I was a kid? I mean, like you, look, here as early as, early in your career you were intrigued by career counseling and you didn't get to it for, 25 years before you came around to it. And, it's other things get in the way. And, if you really stop and think about that, there's things that you were intrigued about, that you were interested about. And you'll say, oh, okay, it might be the time to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, the first part in this process is to really just take a step back and think about those different experiences and accomplishments that you've had, not just in your professional life, but in your life as a whole, because we've all learned a tremendous amount and gained all sorts of skills from our personal lives, whether it's you may be someone who was married to a spouse who relocated for their job 10 times, and you were the person responsible for managing those relocations, or perhaps you just, so many of us are dealing with elderly parents. And through that experience, even though it may be a very tough experience to go through, you may have gained some tremendous skills and expertise that you could blend with your professional expertise and come up with a really terrific business idea. And I always emphasize to people that along with the word passion being overused, I think the other word that gets overused, and again, I am as guilty as the next person, is the whole concept of reinvention. Because when you think about people over 50, in most cases, they're not really reinventing. What they're doing is they are repurposing. They are renovating. Yeah, they're taking, the best of their skills and experiences and accomplishments and merging those with new interests in a more lifestyle-friendly way to create those semi-retirement careers. But very rarely is anyone totally reinventing. So it's, a good thing to do. People always say to me, well, do I need to take assessment tests? And, my answer to that is, will you gain some information from them? Will they be helpful? Of course they will. But quite honestly, you can take a good old-fashioned pad of paper and just start making lists of what you, most enjoyed about your jobs. What were the experiences and accomplishments and projects that really make you smile when you look back on them? And you'll be amazed at how much information you can glean that way.
Right, especially that part that you're talking about where you think about what is it that you really enjoy doing and you kind of reframe it, not that, I enjoyed, say, the experience of helping my parents find housing, but I enjoyed the part of searching out information, looking for resources, matching the resources with the need. And, I'm kind of good at matching resources with need. I'll bet you there's a lot of places where people need the resources to find out what resources are available and have them analyzed in such a way they figure out what needs would be met by that particular resource. And, I'm good at that. Yeah. I mean, that's the repurposing that comes along, as you call it. And
Definitely.
we're seeing that happen a lot, and it's very empowering. I find that people are quite excited to think that what they have done is really still valuable in the world, and that it could possibly not only be a wonderful use of their time, but it could be something that creates some income for them. And,
one of the things I love about working with this age group is, there's so much negative news in the press about, the boomers aging and there's age discrimination in the workplace, which absolutely exists. But the flip side of that is, in terms of figuring out what it is that you want to do, you've got 50-plus years of data and experiences and insights that you can build upon. For a lot of people, the last time that they went through this process was back when they were a sophomore in college, and they were, the ripe old age of 19, and someone said, you need to pick a major. We all know what that experience is like. You pick a major, you don't even know what some of those majors mean, let alone what it would be like to work in that field. But by the time you're 50, you've got a lot of data that you can dig through, and that can be an extremely rewarding experience. And I think you also just have the wisdom and the maturity and the intuitive understanding of what it is that you're good at that can serve you so well in these second act careers.
You are singing to the choir. I just love it. So in your book, you're reviewing over 50 different career options. And so how did you select those? I mean, there's thousands of career options. How did you select the ones that you put in the book?
It was hard, I'll tell you.
I'll bet.
So there were so many possibilities that I really had to set up some rules for myself in terms of what I could include. So what I did was I sat back and I thought, okay, most people who are in their 60s and are thinking about doing something, what are they looking for? And the list that I came up with included a couple of things. I really focused on ideas that are scalable, so people can do them on a very part-time basis if they wish. For example, a small service business. And so if you only want to take on 2 bookkeeping clients rather than building a whole practice, that's realistic for you to do. So I tended to focus on small, scalable service businesses. Another thing that I did is, while in most cases people will need to get some level of additional training, I steered away from anything that was going to require you to go back to school for a full-blown degree. Because I assume most people were not willing to invest that time or money. If you want to, that's great, and you'll have more options. But the options in the book, oftentimes, if you just take a workshop or a continuing ed class or a training program, that might be enough to get you up to speed. And the third thing is I steered away from any brick-and-mortar businesses because, in general, when you're talking about brick-and-mortar businesses, restaurants, storefronts, bakeries, those types of businesses, you're talking about a significant investment of time and money. And again, if that's the path you want to take, great. But I wanted to include things that were a lot more flexible and portable.
Oh, I think that's great. That is great. And me being the queen of solopreneurship, because I think that this is the coming business model in the 21st century for encores, also for creatives. Huge populations of people is what used to be called home-based business or self-employment, and, we're spoken of in a very dismissive fashion. And what has happened is not only these 2 major populations of creatives and encore entrepreneurs, moving by droves into solopreneurship, but what has happened also is your word, they have become scalable in the sense of all the e-tools allow them, they can be in the global marketplace with their website. In fact, they are in the global marketplace with their website. And, so creating a specialty and creating something that they can do that they think, well, gee, nobody here in, little Smithville, whatever state they're in, can buy it, but that's not where they're selling necessarily. If you put your website up, you can be selling your services, your pictures, your advice, your methodology, your coaching all over the world immediately.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can be all over the world.
This morning I met with a client, and she is someone who has a background in organizational development. We were tossing around some of the ideas, and when we went through her background, it came out that she had really enjoyed doing the assessment and interviews. And so we discussed the fact that these days a lot of companies are contracting out their interviewing and recruiting gigs to freelancers. And she recently moved down to South Carolina, and she said, well, I don't know, how many companies there are where I am who might hire me. And I said, you know what? These days you could get hired by a Microsoft, out west, who contracts that type of work out to people. And so the opportunity is both as entrepreneurs, but also for people that might be interested in either supplementing their entrepreneurial work or working on a freelance basis, have just increased exponentially.
It has expanded exponentially, and as I say, it's absolutely perfect for people that we're talking about, baby boomers. You call it semi-retirement. The word that the Small Business Administration and AARP have used is encore entrepreneurs. I mean, there are so many possibilities for people who have a specific skill, and as you say, they want to provide a service business, but you can sit at home and provide that service to the world these days, and narrow your niche so that maybe you only work for IT companies, like Microsoft, and maybe you only work for some financial institutions when you're doing this, and it's okay. It's okay to specialize like that, and you don't have to be located anywhere except exactly where you are, because the e-tools are so absolutely fabulous on making it happen.
Right. So, in fact, let me share with you a great example from the book of someone who does have a niche-oriented online business. I love this story. This is actually a gentleman named Jack Turk who worked in marketing for Microsoft. And he, on his 50th birthday, he did what many people dream of doing, but few actually do, which is he walked into his boss's office and said, I'm done. I'm going to go out and do my own thing. And he, since the time he had been about 5 years old, his real passion had been magic. He had been, fell in love with doing magic when he was a young child, and had always done magic shows on the side. And in fact, when he worked for Microsoft, he actually did a few corporate gigs, and then he just, he would go and entertain at people's birthday parties and different events. And as I said before, he actually, his professional life, he worked in marketing. And one of the things he noticed in being around other magicians was that there were a lot of people who were actually much better at the magic than he was, but he was much better at marketing himself. So what did he do? He now runs an online site, the Magician's Marketing Center, and he sells downloadable ebooks on how you can market yourself as a magician to corporations and for birthday parties. He runs in-person conferences, and he teaches marketing to magicians. And it's a great example. But it's a wonderful example of how you can take your passions and hobbies, merge them with your professional expertise, and find a place where you can really rule the niche on the Internet.
That is such a wonderful story, and I love the way that you tell it, where he realized that the magic itself was not his number one strength. It was really his marketing, but he can now market with people that are doing magic and probably bring to them a level of professionalism that they hadn't even dreamed of, and he can do it without breaking a sweat, as you would say, because that's what he's been doing for years, and he understands both worlds. I love that. So are you? This is probably a rhetorical question. Are you seeing a significant rise in the number of people starting their second act careers, and why do you think that is? If you are seeing that.
Well, I think it's a matter of the numbers. As you referenced before, there are, millions and millions of baby boomers who are living healthier, longer lives. There is also, along with that, the downside is people have to make sure that their money is going to last a lot longer than it used to. And so it's a combination of both necessity and desire. But I think, even for people who don't need to do it for the money, people are saying, what am I going to do for the next 20, even 30 years?
What's going to do all that time?
Yeah. What's going to give my life purpose and meaning? And if I can, earn some money in the process, great. Obviously, the money is not necessarily a motivator in every case. But even in, it's interesting because money is a measuring stick for a lot of people. So even in cases where the financial need is not great, there is definitely satisfaction in generating an income. Yes, most definitely, there are more and more people who are pursuing these second acts.
Yes, there definitely are people that are pursuing those second acts. A lot of it. I mean, they're all over the place, and I've been talking a lot to groups that where we have support groups of people that are looking to re-career, find another job, and I come to them and I say, if you can't find the job that you love, how about creating the one that you want? Let's just create the job that you'd really like to have. And they get pretty excited about that concept.
Yeah. I mean, another way to put it is the phrase I always use is, it is not about finding a job, it is about filling a need.
Yes. So you interviewed over 25 second act people, when you were doing your book. Do you have some stories you'd like to tell us about people that you found really inspirational?
Yeah, lots and lots of stories. There are just so many different interesting stories throughout the book, and I just mentioned Jack Turk. I have a couple of very unusual stories. One of which, I guess, in some respects, the most unusual is a gentleman, Bob Alper, who was a rabbi of a pretty large congregation in Philadelphia, who decided he and his wife really wanted to be able to go up to they had a second home in Vermont, and they loved to ski, and they wanted more time to do that. And so he came to the conclusion that he was going to leave congregational life, and he would open up a on the side, he would do some pastoral counseling and officiate at bar mitzvahs and weddings and those types of things. And about a month after he made that decision and got some office space, he just happened to be flipping through the local Philadelphia Jewish newspaper and came across an ad for Philadelphia's funniest Jewish comic. It was a stand-up night that they were having, and he saw it and he thought, oh, what the heck, people have always told me that I'm funny. So he went, he tried out, he came in third, as he says, I came in third behind a chiropractor and an attorney, but who's bitter. And what happened was one of the people judging the show happened to be the host of the local morning talk show in the Philadelphia market, and she loved his routine. She had him on the show, and he started getting requests for bookings. Fast forward 5 years later, he is working full-time. He actually travels the country with a Southern Baptist minister and a Muslim cleric. The three of them do something called the Laugh in Peace Tour, and they are booked into colleges and maintain a full-time schedule. And one of the things I loved about his story was the fact that he, you say, well, what is being a rabbi and being a stand-up comic have in common? Well, what he said to me was, he said, Nancy, when I'm in a college auditorium and I look out at the audience, and I see a Muslim student sitting next to a Jewish student, and they are sitting there laughing together at the same jokes, and they start talking, I know I'm still doing God's work. And when he's produced some CDs and he's got some books, and he said, when someone comes up to me and says, I love your CD, and my wife listens to it when she's having chemotherapy because it's the one thing that cheers her during that, again, I know I'm doing God's work. And I think his story is an important lesson in that, again, you don't need to totally reinvent. Figure out what's meaningful to you, build on that, but build on it in more fulfilling ways.
Yes, great story. I think that's just a wonderful story. I love that. So you also, and this is kind of, again, a nice follow-up question to that, you have a chapter called Making a Living While Making a Difference, and you said you don't have to work for a nonprofit to have impact through your work. And here you've just told us a story of a person that have impact through your work. Do you have others like that where people are having major impact?
Yeah, and that chapter to me is such an important chapter because it's very clear that most people, by the time they get to be middle-aged, step back and say, I'd like to do work where I feel like I'm making a difference, that I'm in some way, shape, or form leaving the world a better place. And it's very clear that becomes more important to people as they age. And what I always emphasize to people is that doesn't mean you need to go work for a nonprofit or that you need to be Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa needed to be Mother Teresa. You need to use your gifts and talents to help make the world a better place. And in that chapter I have, lots of different examples, but just very briefly, two of them. One was a gentleman who was an attorney, and, he did a lot of divorce cases and sort of, the sort of run-of-the-mill type law cases, and it, paid the bills, and he was fulfilled because he did a good job at his work, but he was not necessarily so fulfilled by the content of his work. And again, without getting into the details of the story, his daughter ended up getting involved with an adoption agency. And he ultimately transitioned into handling the legal work for the adoption agency. And he said to me, now when I go to court and I leave court with a new family and I look at that child and I look at the look in the parents' eyes, that's a whole different feeling than I got when I left court and I left two unhappy divorced people.
Yes.
And so it's a way, he's basically still working as a practicing lawyer, but in a different part of the business. So that's one example. Another example is a wonderful woman who I interviewed who is a country singer. And she feels very, very strongly about veterans and helping veterans. And so she does concerts where she raises money for veterans. She sings songs that appeal to veterans. She also feels very strongly, she has a lot of friends who are Hispanic, and she has composed some songs in Spanish about being patriotic and being part of this country. And so that's, through her creative talents, she is giving back. Now, by the way, in both of these cases, neither one of them is a not-for-profit organization. They are both running for-profit businesses, but they are for-profit businesses that have a purpose attached to them.
Yes.
And as I said, the book is filled with different examples of that.
Yes, yes. And I think that that's one of the things that I see happening in our society overall, that we've got more people who are starting businesses in general where they want to attach a purpose to it. And, we didn't used to see that. And now we see it not only in the boomer businesses, but in all kinds of businesses. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful outcome of whatever it is that's out there in the atmosphere. And maybe it's, a lot of baby boomers talking about leaving a legacy and other people saying, well, me too. I want to do this for a purpose. It's happening everywhere. I think it's a societal change that is going on, and I really like it. So when do you think is the best time, an optimal time for people to start planning their second act?
Well, I think, this is where that old adage, sooner rather than later, certainly holds true. But if you find yourself on the cusp of retirement and you haven't really had time to think about it, there's no time like the present. And so, all things being equal, start sooner. Ideally, I think a real reinvention, again, and I'm using that word with quotes around it, but the process can take up to 3 years. First you need time to really do some soul searching and think about what it is that you love to do and do well and find meaningful. And then from there, it is the process of beginning to research real-world options that are going to be a good fit for you, and then you have to take a look and say, okay, if I want to head in this direction, what type of additional training or certifications or credentials might I need to move into that field? And so that process will take time as well. And then, of course, there's the implementation phase. This is going to take a lot longer or a lot shorter, obviously, depending on what you choose and how much experience you have and a whole host of other variables. I think a very simple thing that everyone can do no matter where you're at in this process is just start to surround yourself with some inspirational second act stories. Because when you read these stories, even if what the person is doing has nothing to do with what you're currently doing, there is always a takeaway or a lesson from their story that you can, just file away in the back of your mind, and you'll get the wheels turning. And so that's just fun to do. And on my website at mylifestylecareer.com, I have a number of resources listed where people can go to get second act inspiration. And it's fun, it's uplifting, it's energizing. There's no downside in doing it, and it'll get you rolling.
Oh, that's great. So what are some of the common mistakes that you see that people make that, when trying to figure out what they want to do as a second act career?
Well, the first thing I would say is it sort of cuts in two ways. The first is I'll see people who will automatically assume that they ought to do some continuation of what they were doing in their last job. I worked in IT, so now I'll be an IT consultant, and basically just to sort of, downsize what they were doing before without making a change. Mm-hmm. And if that's truly what you want to do, then fantastic, and that's great, and, that's going to be an easy move for you to make. But, give yourself, if you don't take the opportunity now to at least think about this and explore some other options, I think you might be cutting yourself off from doing some things that might prove really, really fulfilling for you. So that's one thing. Yeah, I think that's one thing. And then on the other extreme, I would say it's people who have these sort of wild dreams of, well, I'm going to, I used to be an accountant and now I want to go, open a winery. And again, if that's truly what you want to do, that's great. But recognize that when you're making a complete 180, that's a big leap, and it's going to take time, and you're going to need to retrain, and you're going to have to be really, really persistent and stay on task to make it happen. So, take the time, think about what you want to do the research, and test things out. That's the other thing is, you can test things out in small bites. Go volunteer, take on a project, take a few classes, shadow someone at a job. Begin to match what you think the job is going to be like with the reality of what it's really like.
What a good idea. So many things look so glamorous from the outside, and then you get in and find out it isn't that way at all. So do you, because obviously you've worked with many, many of these people, are there any common attributes or traits, that you've detected among the more successful ones?
Yeah, and this is going to sound really airy-fairy, but I'm going to say it anyway, which is it is a belief in your success. People who believe that they will be successful tend to be successful because they get out there and they try. And they, if they hit a roadblock, they find a way around it. And so, we all have different levels of optimism and different levels of self-confidence. But that said, there are ways you can begin, again, to chip away at that. I think by testing things out and realizing that you're actually a lot better than you expected to be in this new endeavor, by spending some time in that new world as an observer and learning, it will make you feel more comfortable. And as you begin to try things out in small doses, you gain confidence, and with confidence you gain competence, and the more competent you become, the more confident you become. And so I find that the people who tend to scare themselves out of really moving ahead are the people who sit on the sidelines and try to figure all of this out in their heads without, at some point, moving forward. So
yes.
Yeah. So as I said, it sounds a little, a little new agey, but it is about developing competence and confidence and getting over the fear.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. So in your lovely book, I like it a lot, you conclude each chapter with 3 tips. So we're reaching close to the end of our interview time. And so what are your 3 final tips for our listeners today?
Well, I think I would just reiterate, first of all, to start early, that it can take up to 3 years to make this change. The second thing is to focus on the things that you can control. Again, I think that the media does a masterful job of scaring older people into believing that we are all going to face incredible obstacles and prejudice in the workplace. And so, just don't listen to that. Instead of, soaking in that type of news, pick up one of these books that has great inspirational stories, or take a look at AARP actually has a wonderful part on their site now called Life Reimagined, and spend time, surround yourself with inspiration, because when you do that, you're really going to get inspired about what is possible. And the last thing I would say is be willing to invest in your success. Think about what you spent on your children's college education, or even, on their violin lessons or their ice skating lessons and all the rest of it. And I'm not suggesting you need to invest thousands and thousands in this, but, be willing to buy a helpful book. Be willing to take a workshop. We're talking potentially about the next 20 years of your life. And so you really need to look at those expenses as an investment and not an expense.
Yes, you really do. And that part about we're all going to die, and the baby boomers are forcing young people out of their jobs, and this is going to be a drain on the economy, and on and on, that horrible press that goes on. There are a lot of us, and I'm sure you're one. There are a lot of us who are saying, the baby boomers have reinvented everything that they have touched in the whole, years that they've been alive, and now we're about to reinvent retirement, and it is going to be a wonderful, wonderful thing because, we're going to reinvent how housing happens. We're going to reinvent how work happens. We're going to be reinventing how healthy aging happens, and just watch, because this is going to be good.
No question.
Yeah, I've devoted an awful lot of this radio show to those conversations, and it's just thrilling to talk with people who are excited about, let's say, shared housing, increasing brain health, better health and vitality, second act careers, creating new work, finding ways to volunteer in the community, and I think this is a great time for seniors to be very active and very activist and very positive. The moment is right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So, yeah, it's here is the time. So I have loved having you as a guest today. I feel like I'm talking to a kindred spirit here, and so I say I refer your book quite a bit, Nancy. So how about, I know people will be interested in checking it out, so can you give our listeners one more time the title of your book, your blogs, anything they can tune into, and how they can contact you?
Sure. The name of the book is Second Act Careers, and it can be found in bookstores throughout the country and obviously also on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. And the website is mylifestylecareer.com, and you can contact me through the website. And also, as I mentioned before, I write a twice-monthly column for nextavenue.org. Always happy to give them a plug because it's a fabulous site for people over 50. It is a PBS property, and you can find that on Forbes.com as well.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful. Well, you have a lot of wit and wisdom and insight to share, and it's just been a total delight having you on the show. And listeners, I want to remind you that this is Jackie B. Peterson. You're listening to Solo Pro Radio, and that I hope you will also not just visit Nancy's website, but also visit my website, bettersmarterricher.com. And as you're starting your second act career, take a look at the 7 principles of solopreneurship and really what it takes to make that solo business be successful. And while you're there, sign up for the newsletter and also join in the conversation on the blog. It's quite active, and you can get all the radio shows for the last 2 years, any of them that you want to tune in, and we've had some wonderful guests. So I hope you will tune in again next week. This has been a great discussion, and Nancy, I thank you again, and we'll talk to everybody soon. Goodbye.